I want to call this special rules meeting to order. Malvina, if you would you give invocation, please?
Ora galanda hei o jale heli gahandes ke atino kohi nimana de dostan heldi do is ahandogi lonstan he o swatli lohi jalegi skadu. Father, we just thank you this morning for your many blessings and thank you for bringing us back together safely. Lord, we just ask that you be in our midst as we go about the work of our nation. Lord, just guide us and give us wisdom and knowledge. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Shelley, would you conduct roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Johnny Kidwell. Here. Sasha Black Fox Qualls. Here. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates. Joe Deere. Mike Dobbins. Kevin Easley. Here. Lisa Hall. Here. Darrell Legg. Here. Dora Petzkowski. Here. Cody Poindexter. Joshua Sam. Here. Melvina Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Here. Kendessa Teehee. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
Okay. We have one business item under new business, and that is for discussion only redistricting data analysis. I'm going to call up A.G. Harshaw, and this is just going to explain from the start to finish how the process went and how the maps were generated. And you know, like I told you all before, I thought it was very important to, at the very first, to get that passed as soon as we could. So, you know, the map that was generated, we could start giving our input as tribal councilmen to what we wanted changed, or if we could change it. So, go ahead, AG, take it away, sir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity today to present on redistricting. This year alone, we've had some significant pieces of legislation that have come across, the Constitution Convention, and now redistricting for discussion today. These, both of these issues are, you know, people are very impassioned in how they feel about it, and I can completely understand that, but it is a fundamental component of our Constitution that these things happen periodically, and it just happens to be the case that both of these items are moving in 2024. So with respect to redistricting, there's been, I understand, several maps that have been presented to members of the Tribal Council that you've all had a chance to take a look at. From my perspective and my role in this, my goal is pretty simple. I'm not particularly interested in what lines are drawn or where, but fulfilling the obligation to make sure that a map that is produced is constitutionally sound. And all of that is on the heels of the history of redistricting. I know some of you in here may have been on the council in past rounds, or certainly may be aware of the difficulties associated in past years. You know, what we've observed back in 2013 was significant litigation in the council as some members of the council versus each other on what redistricting should look like. Out of all of that, we have a precedent that's been established by the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court that gives some pretty bright line parameters about what redistricting mechanically, what it has to look like. And it's, as with other jurisdictions, it's based almost exclusively on population. The mandate of the court over the years has been summarized as one Cherokee, one vote, with population deviation fairly across all council districts. And the number that they've landed on consistently is there cannot be a deviation of more than 10% from the highest to the smallest district. That number sounds like a lot, but whenever you get into the mechanics of preparing maps, it's really not. Some of the changes, and again, Secretary Justice has a PowerPoint with some of the methodology and data behind the map as we've arrived to it today for your consideration and review, that talks a little bit about the population numbers as they've changed since this was last implemented in 2012. And what you see across all districts is pretty extensive growth. And that necessarily requires boundary lines to be changed in a way that you know, can be extensive in some areas. And in fact, in the version of the map that's been circulated and will be reviewed again further, you know, creating a new district from District 5 over to the north part of North Tulsa. The population growth along the North Tulsa corridor, Wagner County, Muskogee County, is pretty significant, and so that does require some of these changes to be made. So the map effort that we've undergone, I know I've submitted to you, Speaker, your request for multiple maps with the eye and the goal of getting something that is constitutionally sound, such that it can survive a legal challenge. That is my only interest in all of that. And I think the map that has been produced certainly does that. We look at a deviation of roughly a half of 1%, which is as fair as it can get. And when you see the mechanical piece of mapping out and how the geodata group establishes polygons, and you had track maps that have been circulated too. You can go to some of these heavily populated areas, say Tahlequah area, North Tulsa area. 1 mile of a boundary line change is significant in terms of what number of Cherokee citizens and population that's picked up. I've had opportunity to talk to most of you, and I've had several of you reach out about certain questions, one of which is, how do we determine data for redistricting purposes? And what we've always done in the past, and as required by law, is it's based on our registration information. I've had some folks reach out about, well, can we look at the Gadoogie portal, or can we look at voter registration? And that is not the basis for which information is collected to draw the maps and establish the boundaries. It's all based on a current snapshot of our registration database. That is what the law requires. And it makes sense because some people, you're a registered citizen or you're not. You may choose to register to vote or you may not. You may choose to get services from one agency of the tribe or not. The database is a static assessment of the Cherokee Nation population. And that is what we used for this information. And in the PowerPoint, you'll see some of the parameters that have to be drawn to get to that point. And what we've tried to do is use the data that was collected in the parameters in previous redistrictings this time, with a cutoff of December 31, 2023 being the snapshot of the registration database by which that information is collected. And so the map that has been circulated is our level best to get as close as we can to a constitutionally, as I like to call it, perfect map that is fair, keeping in mind that some parameters, not pushing people out of office perhaps has been done in previous redistrictings, and trying to avoid litigation that cannot be defended in the Cherokee Nation courts. And that is my fundamental concern and effort behind all of this, is to do my part in making sure that that map is an accurate reflection of the one Cherokee, one vote rule, and follows the same parameters that we have historically to create a map that is legally sound. And so with that, I can turn it over to Secretary of Justice for the PowerPoint, which you all should have a copy of.
They're going to get that PowerPoint pulled up there. You all have a copy of this so you can follow along as well. So as AG Harsha pointed out, this data is pulled from registrations database. IT takes the registration database and sends us the information with certain parameters. We've set those as follows. If any citizen record is marked as void, they are not included. It does not include records of citizens with a recorded date of death. It does not include records of citizens over the age of 100 to account for any records of unreported dates of death. It does not include relinquished citizen records, and it does not include citizens without an active registration citizen ID. The data that was pulled on December 31st of 2023 as our baseline for the number of citizens in this redistricting effort. The next slide shows the current district and the variance between the different districts. Some of them are pretty extreme. If you'll note, District 1 has a percentage change of 52%. And so this is just showing the variance across all and the amount of citizen increase in citizen records. That a lot of that was due to the COVID relief efforts and people moving in and out of the reservation in the different districts. So the population has changed, and you can see that there. The next slide shows the geocoding results of all of the citizens within the district, or within the reservation, I'm sorry. There are 140,756 records, and those are plotted on the map through our ArcMap desktop. It's an Esri software that our GIS system uses. So those are brought into the system. They're not manipulated in any way. We do not change the data that we're presented. We take exactly what is given to us from registration and plot those on the map. The system does it automatically with no manipulation by our staff. the reservation's outer boundaries are imposed on the map so that we can identify those ones that are in or out of the reservation along the boundary lines. So the geocoder relies on physical address to plot these locations on the map. And a lot of the counties have, all of the counties have implemented 911 addressing, which has made this a much better process. Although there is some variance depending on the county as far as how much participation or completion of that 911 process. So we do have some situations where there's errors in the address, and so those would plot by zip code. So of the 140,756 records, 125,856 were plotted based on physical address, and 14,900 were plotted based on zip code. Once the locations are plotted on the map, my team goes in and draws groupings and makes these little geopolitical boundary lines for these polygons that they draw. And that is in an effort to break it down. Instead of showing these large groups, you can break it down into smaller areas, which enables you to draw those boundary lines by pulling in smaller sections of population. So those boundary lines are drawn either by land tracts or by physical boundaries, such as, you know, it might be a highway or it might be a creek or a mountain or, you know, different things like that in order to draw these smaller polygons so that it enables us to draw boundary lines and know who is inside and outside of those lines. The next really goes into what Secretary Harsha was talking about, the 10% deviation. We really strove to, my team did an outstanding job of, it's a lot of work that goes into this to really break that down and try to define those lines in a way that keeps us legal and keeps everybody in their district and does the best to you know, get that broke down. And they got within a 0.5 point variance, which is really great. And then the last slide just shows the draft that's been presented for your consideration. And all of you have received a copy of that. And if you need a digital version, we can send that to you as well. Do you have any questions?
Okay, does anybody have any questions for either one of our presenters? Joe?
I would request a GIS digital map emailed to me. I don't know if anybody else wants that. But that way I can find out where some of these areas are in my district. So, thank you.
Okay.
Let's just do them to all.
We can do that, yes.
Can we include roads? Like a,
Yeah, I can actually send the Google Earth version.
Okay.
So you can
that'd be
zoom in
great.
and it'll give you more detail.
That'll work. Anybody else? All right. Thank you for your presentation. And, you know, it's a very difficult thing. Redistricting is very difficult, you know, and when you look at the last time it was done it with the multiple lawsuits and different things like that, it's tough. And you just can't ever predict what the population is going to be, where it's going to explode and where it's not going to. And as you've seen from the 4 different maps that we have looked at, you know, you've put your input in on let's try this to see what would happen. Yeah, and we did that, and it either knocks people out of their districts or it's just really tough to please everyone. And, you know, I don't like mine is great, but, you know, for the betterment of everybody, I think that's the way I have to look at it. And, you know, you've done a great job. Is the defendability of this map is high. I mean, the tolerances are so low, and I appreciate you having patience with us because, you know, when we ask, I know it puts your team into a little bit of work when we ask for different kind of maps when let's start here, but in the end, you know, I just appreciate everything you guys did. So everything we asked, you made new maps for it, so thank you so much. Anybody else? EO.
Okay, in District 5, the word's just kind of getting around, and I probably have fielded more questions in the last 2 weeks, and I have the whole time with this thing. When will all this take place,
That's a good
if we go
question.
with this?
So the way that this would work is that a map, because one thing is clear is that redistricting has to happen based on the deviation of population. I mean, I wish it wasn't the case, but it has to happen. The way that this would work is that once a final map is approved by this body, it would become the map effective for the general election in 2025. So at the time of certifying as an eligible candidate in the 2025 general election, you will have to live within the boundaries of that district and certify as a candidate for the new district, which would go into effect the moment that new council members are sworn in or re-elected council members are sworn in those districts. So no one, like for example in your district that has moved geographically, no one would be removed from office early. It would all come into effect with a certified candidate winning an election in the next general election.
But, I can see it's gonna be hard for whoever on this new district down there where 5 is at and everything. It's gonna be hard for people to campaign that short of time if they really don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of questions, but I'm not presenting it right, but it's gonna be hard to get a fair shake, really.
And I understand that, and that's some of the questions that I've received from members of this body is, how is one supposed to adopt or adapt to the new district? And there's no easy answer to that. The districts have always changed over time, and they have to because population guides where these district changes need to occur. With respect to the district that's been moved on to the northern side of Tulsa, it is an entirely new district cut out of other previous districts, and I recognize that there's some complicating factors associated with that, but the circumstance we're in is redistricting has to happen, and boundary lines have to change, driven by population, and creating a map that is fair, not just in terms of representation, but folks currently holding office, is what we've sincerely endeavored to do. And I acknowledge that district boundary lines can't be changed without some amount of concern or heartburn. I get that, but it's the redistricting process that happens in every jurisdiction periodically. But we did, strive to make sure that it was fair, not unduly prejudicial to people who are currently holding office, and mindful of population changes.
I know that up there, but I'm not being able to satisfy those people down there. I mean, there's no need of them trying to get a petition and get so many people sign it and not keep from changing or anything like that. That can't be done, can it?
So any group of citizens under the Cherokee Nation Constitution can start an initiative petition. There's a lot of requirements for what that looks like. But as a matter of redistricting that's in front of us now, I think action has to be taken in advance of the next election. The time is due for a map boundary to be drawn and a new map to be proposed. I think it would be up to this body ultimately to determine what map is approved by majority vote. That's the only requirement under the law, is that a legislative act providing for new districts is approved by the council and approved by the, approved by the chief. That is the past practice and how every law in the Cherokee Nation is created. I think it has to be done before this next election. And, of course, anyone can begin a petition initiative. That's always been a component of our Constitution, and efforts to do so have happened periodically over time.
Darrell?
Yeah, I get it. This will probably pass. Some of the frustration is that whenever we say population, we also have to take into consideration the poverty population of some of these counties. My issues with Bellefonte, your issues with Bell, Greasy, are different issues than North Tulsa issues. And the amount of resources that we have to help our constituents in them areas, I know Josh, he could probably use an extra 20,000 in the amount of stuff that he has to help with now that this area is done. And I'm not contending the redistricting. I know this is going to have to happen. Something we may want to look at later on is figure out how to get this changed back to the way it was, if that's what we desire as a council. Figure out the wording, figure out the process. It's just, there's so many more components to just Native American population or Cherokee population that we should be looking at as a variant besides how many we each have. you know. And if you look at the numbers, EO's district in 5, 8,470, that ain't too far off from 9,300, you know? And you're splitting Sequoia County. I just like the way Sequoia County's split, and we got good local representation. I think Lisa's gonna do amazing coming down. I'm not, but it's just, I don't know, when you have somebody from that local area, the constituents feel a lot safer, and I'd be more than willing to relook at this later on and figure out a way to take it back to the way it was, if that's what the council would approve. But that's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this, I asked them to look and to see if we could keep it the way it was. How close could we, if we left it the way it was? It's not even close.
Right.
And you talk about, when you talk about the southern part down there, the growth was the lowest. And that's what you run into, as opposed to up north where the growth was really high. My district was the third highest growth, which surprised me. But that really changes the dynamics of everything when you, I mean, look at 2. My God, I mean, y'all saw that, like, but it is so densely populated in that one area. We tried to break that up. You know, we broke 2 up. We went from 2 and went out. But anytime you start doing that, you're gonna hit those high-density areas that just blow everything up. And that is the problem with this map. You know, even if it's done, then it might take 2 people out of the district instead of 1 or none. And I tried to get them to do it where they wouldn't change it, but it just can't be done. This just changed too much. And on the resources part, I've already discussed of getting things upped, especially, you know, we talked about Josh's situation and different people where, you know, you're going to take on another person's high needs area. You can't do it with what we had. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a problem as far as getting more funding. It's going to have to happen if this is going to work, because you can't ever take the people equation out of it. You know, you can't just make it into a computer model. You still have to look at that human factor. And how are we going to take care of our people? And we'll get more money. It's going to happen, I'll just tell you. And, you know, even the travel, the distance that some of us will have to travel across is forever. And, you know, you got waterways, and you just can't go across the middle. It's not as a crow flies, so we're going to have to go around. There's several, you know, that's going to have some, we're just going to put money into it. That's all there is to it. It's only fair, or it's not going to work. So, EO.
And it kind of amazes me, in my travels around District 5, I go around and boy, everybody say, hey, boy, we're really growing, and you know, I thought we had a deal, and it just shows how much the whole nation's growing. It just, these figures, when I first looked at them, I thought, it can't be right, but I guess it is, but, you know, we were kind of proud of how much things were growing, but I guess it's growing everywhere, so, I don't know, but I just got a lot of sad people.
Dora.
2 things. I just want to clarify the effective date on this again. So you're saying that for the council that is not up for election next year, they will carry on serving the same boundary that is today until that election is completed?
So the 2025 general election, these new boundaries would be in effect. So if you hold office, because if you're already elected into a district, you don't have to you only have to apply to be a candidate every time you're in an election. The only time you have to leave office is at the end of your term or if you move out of district. So for the new districts, every candidate that wants to run for office or re-election would have to certify under the new district guidelines. But the way this map has been drawn, we've been mindful to make sure that every council member who is in office that does not run for re-election, let's say has more years on their term, would not be removed from office by virtue of remaining in their district that they were elected to serve. And that is part of the complicating factors of getting the boundary lines exactly like they are, because in the past litigation and past efforts, there's been times to push people out of office early. And this map makes sure that that doesn't happen. So if those folks that are eligible for reelection in the 2025 general election will have to certify under the new boundaries. Everyone else who's currently serving in a boundary would not be removed from office under the map that's been circulated for discussion.
So those that are still going to be serving or not up for reelection, this map will go into effect for them December 1st or December 3rd, whatever.
At the moment, the 2025 general election is concluded. So when they swear into a new district, they will be swearing into this district. And everyone who holds office on that date will have the district in the map around it, will be changed to that.
Okay. And the second thing is, I see the list of what you did not include. What I'm curious about is because I know Nowata County, and I'm not sure if it's both Adair and Sequoia County or just one of those, are woefully behind in getting their addresses updated, mainly because of the 911 issue. Going forward, I have started a plan to work on Nowata County, which I realize may be a little bit more to do with the Election Commission, but not really, because this will be tribal registration, which is your main source for making this map. So I am working with the Election Commission to get these statistic numbers, and then hopefully counselors will also be able to request a list of those with bad addresses or, and I'm going to get that out to everybody as soon as that is completed. But this can be a very emotional situation, but, this is our time to show an example of Gadoogie, and we need to work to help these citizens get these addresses corrected. I think it will help in the long run in the future. Certainly for redistricting again, it could have some effect. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you, Speaker.
Julia.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify that this would go into effect on the day of the inauguration rather than the day of the election or after the election. Is that correct?
Correct.
When the actual terms change. Thank you.
And if I may, to your point about Nowata County and 911 addresses, at this point in time, every county, I believe, in the Cherokee Nation Reservation has moved to a 911 address system. Some have moved more recently. It takes some time for that information to be updated, through normal processes. And in the instance of no way to geocode a specific location, as was mentioned in the PowerPoint, it's tied to a zip code, which is the best we can do with the data we have until those 911 addresses are shored up over time, which I think is a good idea to put a plan in place for that over time. But it is the database we have today.
You good? Joe?
Have we looked at the financial impact of it's going to have on the election commission with all the new cards and all the different things?
I don't know. I believe they came out with a cost estimate. I saw it somewhere, how much it was going to cost to have this election. And certainly it was something that wasn't overly taxing for them.
Yeah, I was just curious if you can email me later or just tell me.
Yeah. I would, when we talk to Election Commission, I'd ask them today.
Yeah, because I know with all the changes, the new cards, with the Constitution Convention coming out, they've sent out some stuff, and now
Yeah.
if we redistrict, they're going to have new cards again. So I was curious what that impact would be overall.
Yeah, that's a question for them. I couldn't answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Danny?
So if I understand this right, those of us that are coming up for reelection in a year, we will campaign in the new district, even though it's not effective until after the election.
No. I mean, I guess you would want to, yeah, because it would be your new district, because the votes that you're going to draw will be from the new district at the day of election.
Okay. That was a question that I know there's several of us, and there'll be new positions, so whatever takes place after December, then on February, when you file, that will be the district that the votes will be coming out of. And I just got my for the Constitution, I got my new voter's card, so we get one every time we get ready to vote. So that will be where we will campaign, will be, if this passes, is where those map boundaries are at now.
Correct. So I'm assuming the Election Commission would issue new voter cards once, this is all finalized in whatever form it is. But the electorate you would draw from campaigning in a 2025 general election will be the new boundaries.
Thank you.
Anybody else? EO.
Is this public record or is this
Sure.
public record?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Okay, appreciate both of you. I know it's like I said, it's difficult, and it's difficult for us. But, gosh dang, I just don't know how we would do it any different with the way the population has changes. It's just a difficult situation. All right.
Thank you so much for your
Thank you so
time.
much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, any announcements? Okay, no announcements. Where? Oh, okay, go ahead. What is it?
It is the fifth-year scholarship that RSU offers for golf tournament. I sent
Oh,
emails out there.
we'll just do it after, if you don't mind. It'll work. Okay, next scheduled meeting, Thursday, May 30th at 1. Need a motion. Motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor? All opposed? We're adjourned.